You speak about our home province, the Eastern Cape, and when we look at that agricultural potential in the region, and I think your book describes exactly what we see there. We have massive areas of unproductive land coming out of the former homelands, the independent states that we had in the past, and then we've got highly productive commercial farms running next to each other. Are you going to go back into the conversation then where land tenure or secure land tenure is present in some areas and not in others? Do you want to comment on that?
I mean, I think what we are essentially doing now, perhaps we are not keeping up with the promise that is there. Because what is the promise of South Africa is that you have a strong property right, and then you proceed with land reform. But when we think about land reform, we always view it in an aspect of saying, how do you distribute more land so that the Black South Africans have access into the land, which is only just one pillar of that land reform. Because our land reform policy is in 3 branches. It's land redistribution, which deals with these inequities in terms of the access to land. It's a land tenure, which deals with the questions of people who are dispossessed in certain land, and then that land can either be bought in the market or the state compensate them for that. But the one that we are failing and making no progress is land tenure part, which is the 3rd leg of land reform, and that deals with the issue of strengthening people's rights. I would argue that today, as we sit, we haven't strengthened the land rights of people that are in parts of KZN in the former homelands, the land rights of people that are in the former Transkei, in parts of the Northwest and all of that. And I think that's the one aspect that we need to move into. And then I think then once we do that, and of course, the complexities of communal land is very difficult terrain. You cannot just go, I've heard arguments where people say, go to the whole Transkei and apply title deeds. You won't necessarily work in that way. But we will remain with a mixed tenure system. But I think the goal and the progress that we should moving on is in strengthening that land rights. Then after that, the areas that we know that are for agriculture, we begin then to say, how do you work with organized agriculture, with agribusinesses and the others, and ensure that those areas are in full production?
I think that point that you bring out and the areas that have remained unproductive, how then do we take it to the next step where you've got this large tracts of land that government have bought for redistribution, to achieve the level of security of tenure for the new owners and the new users of that land? What's the process?
I mean, I think this gets to one of the conversations that you and I and some of our colleagues have had, which is the story that if you look at the South African agriculture and you say, okay, what's the inclusivity level across all crops? Of course, the livestock is one of those that we all pride ourselves with, largely inclusive. You have over 1/3 or so of cattle with black farmers. The question of whether they are at the commercial level or not rests on where I think some of the organizations like Communicate and the others can help in nutrition and genetics and the other things. But then overall, though, when you're not only sticking to livestock and you bring all of the 36 major commodities that we have at a commercial level, the number drops to 10%, at least in the latest estimations that we have, of the black farmer contribution at a commercial level. But then you take that against the land reform process. There's this narrative in South Africa that land reform is not progressing, but it's actually at 25% of the 30% initial target by the government, which now has been moved to 2030. But then how do you square in the 25% against the 10% commercial production? Is only because much of the land has never been transferred back to farmers, but is sitting with the state. Then to your question of how do we get through that, I think we have to release the land with title deeds and make sure then that we select appropriate beneficiaries. The skills and training is there. The blended finance and other instruments are there, but also the openness of working with private sector, which is what the master plan was at the heart of saying we must do. And not spend a lot of time talking, but really now begin to make things happen.